Hey, what's going on, guys? This is the Edge DFS. We're doing Showdown, Vikings versus Bears on Monday Night Football. My name is Tyson Smith. I'm joined by Ellie Hernandez. We're both Cardinals fans. I think it's safe to say we're pretty happy about what's going on in the world right now.
Yeah, man, that catch by DeAndre Hopkins was incredible. And look, it's really easy to overlook that throw too, though. I mean, rolling
Oh
out
my
to your
God.
left
I know.
and throwing from the opposite side across your body, right? He's going to get yelled at for that. you,
I
you don't do
know.
that in the NFL, but that was a beautiful pass, man. And Jesus, Nuck is a man, man. He three defenders.
I can't believe that.
That's all
I
you can
can't believe
say.
that. I was so ready to be depressed coming into the show. Not only were the Cardinals going to lose, I absolutely bombed my main slate lineups, made like $1.50, and now I'm getting my ass kicked on the Showdown slate that we spent an hour and 40 minutes talking about. Yeah, apparently, what's his name? Danny Whitehead? I don't. Who's the white guy on the Patriots? I'm blanking on his name at this point. I think I've blocked him out of my mind.
That's like the most difficult question to answer of all time. The
Anyways,
white guy in the
the
Patriots.
anyways, I picked the wrong guys so far in this game. It's not over, but little did I know Jacoby Myers would be throwing to Danny Woodhead or whatever the fuck the guy's name is. Anyways, let's talk about quickly, Ellie. We won't take up too much of your guys' time, but we want to follow up on some of the stuff that we've been talking about in the past show. How's your Showdown lineups turning out so far? We're recording this. It's Sunday. It's beginning of the third quarter of the Patriots Ravens game. How are you doing so far? You got a lot of Willie Snead
Not
and Jacoby Myers, or no?
absolutely not. I do not. What sucks is I hand built a Millie lineup too that had Jacoby Myers and Willie Snead in it, and then of course I changed it to that
Oh,
bullshit that I sent you earlier. So I mean, that's a testament to just playing your gut too. If you build a line, leave it in there. You're better off just adding another lineup. I think that's what they said.
it's
Granted,
brutal.
that's yeah, it's just brutal, but it is what it is, man. Like I feel like the strategy was fine. I won't lie, I was a little distracted building tonight. I mean, it was getting close up to the end of that fourth quarter
Yeah,
for the Cardinals game, so I didn't spend as much time as I'd like to, and my heart wasn't there. I was still taken aback from everything that happened. So, it's good to build with a cleared head. So
I
keep that in
know.
mind.
And look, if you guys play as much Showdown as we do, I mean, pretty much primarily focus on Showdown at this point. I feel like there's still an edge there when it comes to Showdown. I feel like I can profit and I can win bigger than I would on the main slate, and just in my opinion. But if you play a lot of Showdown, you just have to have a short memory. You've got to forget and just move on to the next slate and just forget that it even happened. I think that's the best advice that I try to remind myself of that quite often, because I get so down because I just completely bomb on a slate. But it's pretty normal, especially if you're playing for first place and you're not, you're playing large field tournaments, you're not trying to dupe with a lot of people, you're going to have absolutely terrible slates. It's just the way it is.
Dude, Damian
Anything to add
Harris
to
has
that?
100 yards. I didn't know that.
Of course he does.
That Yeah,
Of
of
course he
course he
does.
does. I'm a week late there.
I know. I know. All right, guys. So we're going to talk about the Vikings versus the Bears. This is Monday Night Football. Draftkings very recently released their salaries. We're going to take a look at the Vegas totals here. You got Minnesota, who's 3-5, and they're favored on the road. Go figure. Chicago 5-4. They're the worst 5-4 team in the history of the NFL potentially. Minnesota is minus 181 with a 64% win probability. The over/under on this game implied total of 43.5. So potentially a very low scoring game. You've got a spread of 3, so close to an even game. I think Minnesota is trending up. They've won the last 2 games. They beat Green Bay a couple weeks ago. They won last week, and Chicago's trending down. I think they're evening out to the 7-9 team that they'll eventually be, or the 6-10 team that they're eventually going to end up being, especially with Nick Foles as the starting quarterback. Minnesota has the potential to be a high-scoring team. They're just not very consistent. The main reason why Minnesota has been able to win the past 2 weeks has been Dalvin Cook, and that's going to reflect on, when we look at the prices here, it's going to reflect on his price. This is one of the highest priced players I can remember in the recent history that wasn't a quarterback. So what are your thoughts on just this matchup in general here from a football aspect?
God, I hate whoever the scheduler is for these
Dude,
showdown or
it's
these
terrible.
primetime games. I get you can't really look into the future and see this, but the Bears, I think you absolutely can. Like, dude, fucking Mitch Trubisky is trash anyway. So, like, whoever planned this was literally just trying to appease a Chicago fan base.
Yeah.
I can't even think of any reason. I mean, I digress, but the Jets have had like 14 primetime games this season. Like, I don't understand why these dumbass teams are getting in there. And I don't think this is going to be a good game because even though Minnesota's been trending up, I think it's still very difficult to anticipate what we're going to be able to, or what we're going to get tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Minnesota could shit the bed. Kirk Cousins could do absolutely nothing. And granted, Dalvin Cook will probably still get there because he's a monster, but other than Dalvin Cook, there's the potential that nobody has fantasy output. And I think this is going to be a very weird game. It could be just an absolutely garbage game as well. I really don't see this being a very entertaining game to watch. This is going to be sloppy football and probably Dalvin Cook just smashing on some shitty defense. But that's what I feel.
Well, this is going to be hard to decipher, in my opinion. You have Chicago. We'll talk about injuries. We'll talk about the running back situation in a second. But you have Chicago basically without a starting running back. They're calling up dudes from 2009 from the practice squad to play, i.e. Lamar Miller. And there's some other guys who I really am not comfortable with. So we'll talk about the running back position for Chicago in a minute, but I think this game has the potential for an absolute shitfest. But there's also high upside. I think both offensives can be pretty powerful. You have some star power. You have Adam Thielen. You've got Allen Robinson. If he does play, we'll get into injuries right now. But you have some star power. You have the potential for a high-scoring game. I just don't know if these teams are good enough to actually do that. So let's move on to injuries real quick. So when it comes to the Vikings, you just have Irv Smith Jr. out, which is kind of a big deal. I think he was involved in the offense quite a bit. That opens things up a lot for the tight end position. For the Vikings, there's not a whole lot to talk about on Minnesota side. When it comes to Chicago, Allen Robinson is questionable, which is the biggest news possible. If he's out, this slate becomes actually really fun, in my opinion. I love Allen Robinson. If he plays, I want to play a lot of Allen Robinson just because I love this guy. I think he's a top 5 wide receiver, and if he was on a better team, he would be putting up some crazy stats. But if he's out, I think it makes it really interesting to find an edge with ownership. You got Cole Kmet, questionable, doesn't really matter, and then David Montgomery's out. So we mentioned that in the intro. David Montgomery's out. We don't have a true star. You have Tariq Cohen, who was put on the IR earlier in the season. They have a lot of money tied up in this position, and now they're playing nobody. You're going to have an opportunity for Cordero Patterson to get some random plays, but I think the starting running back is going to be an interesting situation this week. And then you have the professional boxer Javon Wims. He's out for who knows how long. He's suspended. When it comes to injuries here, what are you keeping an eye on? Obviously, Allen Robinson is a big deal. David Montgomery's officially out. How is this going to affect you building tomorrow? Are you going to have to wait until 90 minutes unless you hear anything?
I don't know. I think so. It depends on when we get the Allen Robinson news. I think everything hangs on that, obviously. He's going to be one of the higher-owned players. And, I mean, again, if he's not in, it's going to be – I think this slate gets a little more fun. in the shit fest slates, you have no idea who the hell is going to get the ball. So you can kind of get creative, and it's not going to be an issue. So
Yeah.
I think that's really the only entry that I give a shit about in this game. I don't know if Herb Smith being out gives me any love for Kevin Rudolph or whatever. I mean, that guy's like 94, and I think he's just there in spirit at this point.
It's Kyle Rudolph, by the way. But yeah, Kevin Rudolph. I don't know. Sounds like a DJ or something.
I'm pretty sure that is that DJ with the one with Lil Wayne or whatever. I don't know, man. But so first of all, Baltimore turned the ball over again, and New England's gonna score.
It just goes to show. It just goes to show. We don't know anything about. We can't predict this. It's just impossible.
Jack Johnson is the receiver. Like, dude, I don't even know who the. I can't stand the Patriots sometimes. You have no idea who's getting involved in this attack. But yeah, man, I think Allen Robinson is obviously the key to the slate if we find out if he's playing or not. I mean, even then, you start running into a weird issue because Nick Foles hasn't been doing anything. So, I mean, you could have DeAndre Hopkins, Tyreek Hill, and Devontae Adams on the same team, but if your quarterback can't throw it to you, it doesn't fucking matter. So I think that's something to take into account for tomorrow night as well.
I mean, look, Allen Robinson, he's got a knee injury. You know, that's always tricky for a wide receiver. He was limited in practice the past few days. So it's not like he didn't practice at all. I think he's trending towards playing. He's the best player on this entire team. I think if he can play, they're going to allow him to go out there and play. Just me personally, I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm going to start building lineups with him in it. And if last minute if he gets announced out, then there's a lot of salary that opens up, and you can really have some fun. So real quick, let's just get into our predictions on ownership. We obviously don't have ownership out right now, so we're just literally using some of our experience to kind of guess at where we think ownership will come in at. When it comes to the top, let's say top 3 positions. Ownership wise, where do you think that's falling at, in your opinion? Who's the top owned guy on this slate?
Easily Dalvin Cook. I don't think I need to say anything more about that. Allen Robinson plays, and I'm probably gonna have to go with Adam Thielen. Being the other guy. And then you're gonna get Nick Foles and Kirk Cousins to fall in as well. I can see Dalvin Cook easily being 35% captain. I don't think he'll be much higher than that because of his price tag. It's gonna be some awkward building.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. I think other than that, I don't think you're gonna have a captain above 10%. The Adam Thielen looks interesting. I mean, depending on what his ownership comes into, that might be an interesting captain play tomorrow as a pivot off of Dalvin Cook. But again, he's still a little bit expensive, so I wouldn't expect him to get too much ownership. But, might be an interesting spot. But overall, I think my top 3 guys are Dalvin Cook, Robinson, and Adam Thielen, with Dalvin Cook having the very significant edge in overall ownership.
Yeah, I think Kirk Cousins will probably be number 2 owned. I think it'll be Cook and Cousins. Then you can go to Allen Robinson, and then I think maybe like 4th it'll be Big Dick Nick. That's just my opinion. I personally don't love him. I'd rather play somebody else this week. I wish they played Trubisky, in my opinion. I mean, I know Trubisky's not that good, but I think he, from a fantasy wise, I think he can have these crazy ceiling games out of nowhere, which makes it entertaining. I wouldn't be surprised if
you can always bench Mitch and Nick Foles comes out and tears it up. That's the only time he does well.
Yeah, exactly. When Nick Foles is the starter, like for the whole season, I don't think he does great. But let's move on to the breakdown here. We're going position by position, real quick. Quick reminder for you guys, throw us a like, subscribe. We're doing Showdown videos for every Showdown slate for the NFL. When NBA comes back, we're going to be doing NBA Showdown, which is like less than a month, around a month from now, right? The 22nd of December is when they're coming back. So anyways, throw us a like and a follow. We really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Let's get into quarterbacks. We talk about it every single slate. Do you have to have both quarterbacks for this? Do you have to have any quarterbacks for this Showdown slate?
I don't know. It's weird, man. I don't necessarily like Nick Foles, and I don't necessarily like Kirk Cousins. I think I'm going to probably build half my lineups with exposure to them and half my lineups without, just to kind of balance it out a little bit. I don't think either is in a particularly great spot to go off. And honestly, I don't think either will. They don't really have the capability to put out a ceiling output. The Bears defense is still pretty decent. And again, they're going to be primarily focused on stopping Dalvin Cook, which nobody can do. So
Yeah.
Mike Zimmer wants to run the ball. He's going to run the ball, and I think that impacts Kirk Cousins the most. Nick Foles, I guess, is kind of in play, but again, he's expensive as hell as well. And I really don't know if I can play him anymore. It's just, he doesn't get there. But again, you might need one of these two. You might need him just for the aggregate score, or just the raw points to help your overall lineup. So it kind of depends on whatever game script you're going with. I think you could easily just stack the hell out of the running game, throw in a defense and a kicker, and probably be okay for most of your lineups here.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at, what, a 43.5 total. Traditionally speaking, I mean, it's pretty obvious that you can go heavier on kicker and defense in this game. You know, I think the field will be on that as well. So I don't know if playing two quarterbacks necessarily is going to make you different. I don't think that's the case ever. But in this case, if Nick Foles if you had Nick Foles and Cousins in, and it happened to be a shootout randomly, obviously that's going to really help you. Let's look at Kirk Cousins' fantasy box score here. He's all over the place. He's had some bad games, even in the win against Green Bay. I mean, this is how dominant Dalvin Cook is. The quarterback for the team that wins scored 10 fantasy points. He threw for 160 yards and a touchdown, and he only threw the ball 14 times. That's how valuable Dalvin Cook is against Green Bay.
I'm pretty sure that touchdown was to Dalvin Cook.
Well, one of them was, yeah, exactly. That one was, and then he had three rushing touchdowns. So I personally, at 10.2K, I'm hoping the field is slightly under on Kirk Cousins, because I know he's not the best quarterback out there, and I know he's been disappointing, but I know he can sling the ball too. I know that he can put out a huge game randomly. And if he puts up 29 points like he did in the loss against Atlanta, if he puts up 29 fantasy points, he's going to be in the optimal. That's a guarantee. You're not going to put up 30 fantasy points on a showdown slate and not be in the winning lineup. Shit, in a 43.5 total, if he puts up 20 points, he's going to be in the winning lineup. So this is something to consider if you're saying, fuck this guy, he sucks. Yeah, he can suck and still end up in the optimal lineup, and he can still win you some money. I'm a little higher on Kirk Cousins than I probably should be, but me personally, I'm going to have a lot more Cousins than I am Nick Foles. Now let's look at Nick Foles. Let's look at his fantasy box scores here. Nothing to write home about either. A little more consistently around the 12 to 17 point range. That's sort of his median output. For whatever reason, with the canned projections I'm getting now, he's actually projected for more points than Nick Foles' median points. So I don't know Nick Foles is projected for more points than Kirk Cousins. Sorry about that. These guys both, I don't think very highly of them, so I'm mixing them up quite a bit. Anyways, how do you go about picking which guy you want, and is it just based on your game script for that particular lineup?
I mean, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Again, I'm gonna end up landing probably a little bit more on Foles, just because I expect Dalvin Cook to absolutely crush. So, if they're running the ball, Nick Foles is gonna have to throw to keep him in the game, and the Bears aren't good on offense, so he's gonna have garbage stats anyways. So I think he's reasonable, and what is he, 9,800? So if I'm forced into it, I'm probably going to have a little bit more exposure to him. But again, I don't think Kirk Cousins is an awful play. You got to be prepared for a very shitty performance, and that includes without turning the ball over. He could actually just go out and attempt to pass 7 times. So there's going to be a lot of volatility in it tomorrow night. So I think my exposure to both these quarterbacks is going to depend on the field and where they're at, and it's going to depend on my game script. Tomorrow night, I might just look at ownership exposures when I'm building and not worry about the players themselves.
Dude,
I don't know what to do.
I mean, honestly, that might be the way to do it when you're sort of lost on what can happen, because, in my opinion, I'll have a couple stands on this slate, but overall, I'm just gonna find the best lineups when it comes to roster construction with a 4-2, a 2-4, whatever I think is gonna happen in the game, and let the optimizers, let my formulas in Excel sort of figure it out for me, and just play whoever is projecting for the most points with the lowest ownership, with the highest leverage. Let's move on to running back. Oh boy, running back for the Bears. We've got, obviously, Montgomery is out. Tariq Cohen is out. We've got Ryan Nall is your starting running back for the Chicago Bears. 6,200 for Ryan Nall. I haven't watched a lot of game film on this guy. I don't know how to approach. I don't know how to approach him. I'm definitely going to end up watching some film tomorrow on any. I'm going to go through his box scores. I'm going to figure out, okay, where is this guy? When did he actually play? And maybe watch some film on how he did when he did play. But last week he had, against Tennessee, he had 4 receptions on 4 targets for 35 yards and a touchdown. I don't know how that translates into this game. I don't remember. I didn't watch that game. I don't know that you did either. But me personally, there's no reason, Ryan Nall just doesn't stick out to me. Like, I've never even heard of this guy until doing research for this slate, to be honest. So right. I don't know how I'm going to handle this. I don't know how the Bears are going to handle this. Like, Ryan Nall hasn't gotten a single carry the entire fucking season. They're not going to hand him off the ball. He's going to be like a James White sort of scat back, third down guy that catches the ball out of the backfield. Does that make, Artavis Pierce at 1,800? Does that make him the first and second down back who gets the goal line carries? I don't know, because he literally there's nothing. He was active in week 6. This is going to be one of those things where we really need to look at Twitter, look at the beat writers in Chicago, try to find any information we absolutely can on Twitter to see if there's any sort of edge we can get by figuring out who's going to get the snap shares here. And then you have Lamar Miller. Yes, that Lamar Miller. I'm pretty sure. I mean, is he in his 50s at this point? I like the name. I forgot about this guy completely. And it looks like he played 1 game in 2019. He was active for most of the 2018 season. So he's been out of the league for basically a full year. I don't know if him being called up is actually just to have emergency back, or if he's actually going to get snaps. I'm leaning towards probably not. He is $200. So how are you handling this? Oh, and obviously I'm leaving out Cordero Patterson. So Cordero Patterson with Tariq Cohen out, Patterson was getting a lot of snaps as that second running back, as that third down running back. So does Patterson now, is he being pushed out? I don't know how to treat this. I would lean more towards Patterson getting way more opportunity. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Patterson was starting tomorrow and getting handoffs. I don't know how to handle this. So, Ellie, do you have any sort of insight on? Do you have some special code that you can unlock to figure out how the hell this is going to work?
Yeah, here's the code. There's an X button next to all their names. Just take them out of your lineup. Look, it doesn't make sense to run Dalvin Cook and running backs from the other team anyways. I want as much Dalvin Cook as I can possibly have, which means I'm going to have very minimal exposure to any one of these running backs in the first place, just based on my builds.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing. I don't want to deal with it. I absolutely don't want to deal with it. Because even here's the thing is Ryan Nall absolutely could go off. I doubt it. I mean, I've never heard of him. I didn't know he had a touchdown last week. And no, you're absolutely right. I didn't watch the fucking Bears play. So, but I mean, look, dude, I'm not playing these guys. I'm not going to worry about it. I'd rather have Cordero Patterson. Yes, he might be 95,
Yeah.
but he's still fucking fast.
Yeah.
So, he's an animal. I'll play some of him.
Oh yeah.
And Lamar Miller maybe at $200. That's not terrible. I mean, a $200 punt at the position isn't awful. And Lamar Miller did have a couple touchdowns like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So at least he has something on his resume.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. And he's really only been out of the league for like a year and a half. He was a part of that ridiculous trade for Laramie Tunsil from Miami
Dolphins
to Houston.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And so he played, or was the other way around. That's how he ended up on the Dolphins.
I thought he was on the Dolphins and then got traded and then he disappeared, I think.
Yeah, and then he ended up on he ended up on the Texans. Yeah, I don't know what happened after that. And it's ridiculous that we know that in the first place. But
yeah,
I think we honestly, man, I think we spend way too much time on the Chicago Bears running backs.
Well,
I can't stand them. I 100% get reviewing them because we want to make sure that we're looking at these individual plays. But for me personally, I will not have any one of these guys in my build, and that's mainly because of the amount of exposure that I'm going to get to Dalvin Cook. Not even being facetious or smart ass. I am going to be heavy on Dalvin Cook, and I just don't stack running backs from opposite teams.
Well, look, Patterson is technically a wide receiver, so we'll get to him in a second. But just to give you guys a little bit of a spoiler, I'm super high on Patterson. I have been for the past 3 seasons. This guy finally is getting actual snaps. He's finally getting snaps as a wide receiver, and now he's getting snaps as a running back. I've been trying to get this guy in my lineup for Showdown for years.
And he's not priced. He's not getting priced like he's going to get snaps at running back.
He's not getting priced. He's 5,200. We'll get to him in a second. Let's move on to running backs for Minnesota. Not much to talk about here. Dalvin Cook, put him in your lineups. There's no reason to be smart and try to fade him because he legit can go off for 40 fantasy points. And it's happened this season twice in a row. Let's look at let's look at this. This is pretty interesting. So the past 2 weeks, 42 fantasy points, 51 fantasy points. And then he had a terrible 19 fantasy point game. And then 31, 29, 17, 21. His floor is 19.9 this season. Dude, you got to lock this guy in. There's a reason why he's priced at 13.6 because DraftKings doesn't want him to be 100% owned. I mean, maybe they don't care.
He isn't,
I mean,
yeah,
but
if he isn't tomorrow night, I don't understand. I don't get it if he's not 100% owned.
He should be because there's being contrarian and then there's just being fucking stupid. And if you don't play Dalvin Cook tomorrow, you're being fucking stupid, in my opinion.
Bro, you don't have to throw the ball to him. You're not dependent on Kirk Cousins being a shitty quarterback. You're not dependent upon him having a good game. All he has to do is hand it off. And I'll be honest, I think a fun handcuff tomorrow night is Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison.
Absolutely.
At 2K, I mean, you're capturing a lot of the offense. You can do whatever the hell you want on the other side because I don't think anybody's just going to say, hey, let's play the backup running back. But
I think Madison's going to be super low owned in my opinion because no one wants to play people typically when you're coming from playing regular fantasy football coming over to playing main slate, you're just not playing 2 of these guys in the same. So you have to switch your mentality. That's why I don't like to play main slate a lot because I'm so into Showdown. You can do whatever the fuck you want, and I love that. Being able to play Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison in a lot of lineups together, it might seem, counterintuitive, but to me, you're capturing all of that offense. And
what did Madison have last week?
Let's see. Let's pull up his.
I'm sorry, Mike, guys. Mine isn't loading.
No, you're good, dude. So obviously, Madison played week 5, week 6, I believe, for Dalvin Cook, he was a starter. He did pretty good. He did okay. Last week he had 6.9 fantasy points. He had 12 rushes for 69 yards. That's with Dalvin Cook going fucking ham. So
right. And yeah, he got garbage points. He was in there because they benched the starters, right? So I think that's very viable. And at the same time, he's going to spell. So if he comes in and spells for Dalvin Cook, he's probably coming in on the third down, giving him some rest, and he's going to have an opportunity to get involved in the passing game. So I like him. And
yeah,
I'm probably getting ahead of myself.
Well, I can see a situation where, Dalvin Cook scores 2 rushing touchdowns, maybe a receiving touchdown, and Alexander Mattison scores a rushing touchdown and gets 4 or 5 receptions.
Willie Snead scored again.
Are you serious? Dude, Willie Snead? All right.
Bro, I spent like 10 minutes talking about him when you were away, too. That's an exaggeration, but he was priced good enough to get into your lineups, and I just didn't have enough exposure.
Bro, this guy... fuck, whatever. All right. Showdown is not for the faint of heart, but we love it. We love it anyway. So let's move on to the next slate. I don't even care. I'm gonna lose every single dollar. It's all right. Let's just move on. Let's continue to talk about Alexander Mattison. I think he's a great option. Even as a spellback, he's getting between 3 to 10 carries and getting upwards of 4 targets a game. And at 2,000, he could be your key to unlock a winning lineup, because we're gonna need to find some salary savers here. Anything else to add to the running backs for this slate?
No, I'm good, man.
All right, wide receivers for the Vikings. We got Adam Thielen at 10K, Justin Jefferson at 8.6K, and then you got Chad Beebe at 1,000 flat. Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, they're projecting very close to each other. So depending on how you're building lineups, I feel like Justin Jefferson is going to end up in more lineups if you crunch out a ton. But I think Adam Thielen's still the number one guy. Adam Thielen's the guy. Justin Jefferson has high upside, but he's boom or bust. Thielen is a possession receiver. He can go off. How are you handling these? There's only really 3 receivers we need to talk about here, and how are you handling these guys?
I'm probably not going to be able to get much Adam Thielen just because I'll be paying up for Dalvin Cook for the most part. But I'll be jamming in as much Justin Jefferson as I possibly can. I think he also is an interesting captain play. If you want to kind of save a little bit of salary and really be able to jam Dalvin Cook into every single lineup. Justin Jefferson, he's a top 5 rookie wide receiver. He might be a top 5 big play wide receiver in the NFL. Like, I think he's up there with DK Metcalf and Devontae Adams and touchdowns. Or it's Tyreek Hill in touchdowns over 20 yards. He's tied for second place, I believe. But Justin Jefferson can go off. Dude's fast, and he's a big physical receiver. And everybody's going to be worrying about Adam Thielen and Dalvin Cook. I get Chicago's defense is good, but it's because of their front. They're 7 men in the box, right? I don't know much about their secondary, but I feel like they're going to have a hard time covering both Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. So I like those two. These other guys just aren't in play for me. Chad Beebe at 1K. I don't know, man. Kirk Cousins sucks, and I think he's going to just try and throw to his 2 best guys. And even if he doesn't get it to one of the wide receivers, he's going to throw to Dalvin Cook or Madison. So I don't think anybody else is going to be in my player pool other than Thielen and Jefferson, wide receiver for these guys.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at his ceiling when it comes to actual games he's played, I mean, you'd be lucky if you got 6 fantasy points out of this guy. More likely you're going to end up with 3 or 4. I don't think it's worth it at that price tag. If he was $200, I think I would be more comfortable, or $400, but 1,000 is a nice price. I just don't think he has a ceiling. And if you're playing tournaments, you need that 20, 30 point ceiling, which Justin Jefferson has. And I think at 8,600, I'm hoping he's under the radar because he hasn't had a very consistent season. If you look at his fantasy box score here, he has a 42-point outburst, 9 receptions, 166 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and he had a 2-point conversion in that game. And he has a 33-pointer and a 17-pointer. Obviously, this guy can go off, and that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that boom bust situation, and in his case, I think he's going to be a little bit lower owned because you just can't fit this guy in. If you want to get all the best players in this game, he's going to sort of slip under the radar. He's, in my opinion, I think he's a great captain choice. I have to do some building, and obviously I want to see what his ownership comes in at. At captain, I think there's no chance he's above 5% owned at captain. That's just my opinion on it. I think Thielen can be upwards of 9 to 10%. I think Allen Robinson can be 9 to 10% or even higher. But Justin Jefferson is, because of the price, because of roster construction, I think he's going to be under 5% owned, and that's how you win a 200,000 entry tournament by throwing a guy like this in. Just like having Willie Snead at fucking captain. Anyways, anything to add about? Are you going to have multiple of these guys in the same lineup? Are you going to have Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson together? If you do, you obviously got to play Kirk Cousins, right?
Well, if I do that, yeah. I mean, the problem is that probably means I'm fading Dalvin Cook, and I just don't know if I'll be able to do that. So probably not. I probably will not be stacking them. Look, man, I would rather lose my money tomorrow night banking that Dalvin Cook is the best player on the field than pretty much anything else. I've been, we've had some rough nights. I don't think I'm gonna overthink it that much. I'm gonna jam him in and then try and get different elsewhere. So, I just don't think it's going to, roster construction-wise, it's not going to lead me to getting both Jefferson and Thielen.
Yeah, we're trying to win first place. I don't think that fading Dalvin Cook is, smart. It's not like, oh, we can be different. No, that's like I said, that's being fucking stupid. Let's move on to the wide receivers for the Bears. You got Allen Robinson at 10.8K, so he's about 800 more than Thielen. He's questionable right now. I don't see him sitting. That's just me personally. That's just my opinion. He could keep an eye on it. You got Allen Robinson at 10.8K, and then it's a large drop off down to Darnell Mooney at 6.6K. Then you have Cordero Patterson, who's listed as a wide receiver. He's sort of, he's kind of that Taysom Hill kind of a player that can move around and do everything. He's at 5,200, and then you have Anthony Miller at 4,800. Anthony Miller, at the beginning of the year, was the number 2 guy. I highly touted him. I thought he was going to have a great year. He just sort of, whether it was his lack of production or whether it was Darnell Mooney stepping up to that number 2 role, he's just sort of fallen by the wayside. He's at 4,800. I think he's an option in this game as well. I think all 4 of these guys, I really want to get a mixture of all 4 of these guys. I know that Nick Foles is not an amazing quarterback, and with a low total like this, typically I'm not going to try to load up on wide receivers. But I want to spread out I want Allen Robinson in every lineup if he's playing, depending on how my builds go. But I want to then spread out Patterson, Mooney, and Miller from there. How are you handling these three or 4 guys? Are you going to even want to play Miller?
No, I don't want Miller anymore. I think Cordell Patterson is the better play in that price range just because he's going to have the rushing upside. I'm not big on Cordero as you are, but I think this is a good opportunity for him to kind of be used a little bit differently. Another thing to keep in mind for this game is Matt Nagy's not calling the plays. He's giving that responsibility to his offensive coordinator. So,
which is smart, which is really smart on his part.
I agree. Now, honestly, that may begin to make me change my mind a little bit more in the day for Anthony Miller because if a new play caller takes over, he might want to switch back to what's been working in the past. And Anthony Miller does have that that ability to just take the top off of the defense.
Yeah.
But again, Darnell Mooney is the same kind of player, and he's a little bit better at it. So I think he's in play for sure. But yeah, Allen Robinson, I think if he plays, you get him in as many lineups as you possibly can. And you really don't think twice about it. The only thing you'll need to keep in mind is there is a bigger drop off between the top price players and the mid tiers and lower tiers. So you're probably going to be sacrificing somebody to be jamming in A-Rob. So if you want Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, and A-Rob, you're probably not going to have either quarterback. You're not going to be able to afford it. So you're going to need to pay attention to opportunity cost tomorrow, especially at the wide receiver position, which again is kind of why I like Darnell Mooney at 6.6K.
Yeah.
He's kind of in a little bit of a sweet spot. He's got a similar upside to what Allen Robinson has. The difference is Allen Robinson is going to eat a shitload of the targets, and he can end up with 12 receptions for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Whereas Darnell Mooney or Anthony Miller, you're looking at maybe 3 to 6 receptions apiece if they kind of have a stealing game. So that's one thing to take into account for tomorrow. But again, I think it's just going to come down to your roster construction and how you need to fit the pieces in.
It's going to be a little hard because you're going to one of these guys is going to get left out, whether it's Allen Robinson, Adam Thielen, like they're just, or the quarterbacks. I would lean more towards fading one of the quarterbacks and getting one of these other guys in. But if you look at Darnell Mooney, you can expect about 5 targets, upwards of 9 is his high this year. And you can expect for him to get 3 or 4 receptions for about 50 yards and maybe a touchdown. So it's nothing to write home about. I think he's priced well, but he has a high upside to catch like a 40-yard touchdown pass. I think that's why you would want to get a guy like him in your lineup, because he might be just forgot about at that price. It's possible that Anthony Miller is more of a name, at least from the last few seasons. We kind of remember Anthony Miller stepping out every once in a while. He's had a couple of decent games. Week 8 against New Orleans, he had 11 targets, 8 receptions, 73 yards. He didn't have a touchdown. He's had 2 touchdowns this season, but it was earlier in the year. I believe it was week 1, 2, and 3. That was with Trubisky. I think Foles took over in week 6 maybe? Do you remember? Here, let's actually. I actually want to look at that. Trubisky was the starter from week. Oh yeah, he was only a starter for 3 weeks. That's interesting. So let's look at Darnell Mooney's output for those first 3 weeks. He was doing okay. I mean, there was nothing. I think it's pretty consistently. It's actually gotten better over the course since Nick Foles has actually taken over. So maybe Mooney is the guy that benefits from Nick Foles playing. So I think at this point Mooney's the guy. Anthony Miller might be sort of a fade on this slate, but whenever you have a guy that has that upside and you forget about him, it makes me nervous to completely fade him. I might want to get a little bit of Anthony Miller in there as well. Me personally, I love Cordero Patterson. This team, yes, they're 5-4. They have a shot at the playoffs, but to me, they're on the downswing of their season. They're just fighting to stay above 500 at this point. I think Cordell Patterson will be involved in a lot of gadget plays. There's no reason why they're not going to go for it on 4th down. They're not going to run Wildcat, and he's going to be directly involved in a lot of those plays. He's a kick returner. He may get a couple punt returns. He's going to be on the field a lot. And Cordell Patterson at 5,200, for what he's getting projected at right now, he's like my optimal captain right now because you could fit everyone else in there. He's middle of the road. He's not too low priced. He's not too high priced. Look. If you look at his numbers here, yes, 8 fantasy points this season is his ceiling. I know that's not good. I agree with you. But we're looking for opportunity. We're looking for targets. We're looking for carries. We're looking for red zone opportunity. He gets those opportunities. They haven't actually come to fruition yet. And yes, that sounds like me, putting in my lottery ticket. But for a guy like Cordero Patterson, I'm trying to convince you to play him because I don't know. I like him a lot, and I think one of these days is going to pay off. I think he's not the Taysom Hill, because Taysom Hill is not getting as much opportunity. Cordell Patterson is on the field quite a bit. Anyways, I'll stop talking about Cordell Patterson at this point. Anything else to add to these wide receivers?
No, man. I think we're good on that one.
All right, so let's move on to the tight end position for the Bears. All right, so we've got some injuries here. You got Cole Kmet. I mean, there's really no one to talk about. Like, the only guy really to talk about here is Jimmy Graham. And at 7,200, can Jimmy Graham get you that 2-touchdown game?
I don't know if I'll have any Jimmy Graham. I'll have a little bit of exposure here, and it will probably increase based on whatever the field is at. Shitty quarterbacks like to dump the ball off to tight ends and secure receivers. So I think Jimmy Graham is fine. But again, there's so much to pay for that I don't know if I'll end up getting there.
Yeah.
Cole Kmet, I don't think is a terrible play at $800. It's essentially a punt at the tight end position, but he's going to be more. He has more upside. I mean, he has the ability to get out in the open field and run for 25 yards. Jimmy Graham's not really going to be able to do that. He might be a red zone target, but Cole Kmet can get involved. If he doesn't play, I don't completely hate Demetrius Harris at $200. I think he had a touchdown in like week 4 or something like that. Just some bullshit touchdown. And that's really what you need for a $200 guy. So that's what's going to, if Cole Kmet is out, I may jam him into a couple lineups so that I can throw Dalvin Cook and the captain and still be different enough because that dude's at 5%. So that's all I have to say about this shitty tight end pool.
I think the field is going to agree with you, and I think Jimmy Graham and Kyle Rudolph are going to be under-owned. These guys both can catch 2 touchdowns, all just like basically have 3 receptions for 2 touchdowns and like 7 yards, but can break the slate. And Jimmy Graham last week against the Titans had 6 receptions for 55 yards and a touchdown at 17.5 fantasy points. I feel like that is not a crazy situation in this game for him to score a touchdown and get 5 receptions. I'm going to be higher on Jimmy Graham than you are, but it goes to show at 7,200, who do I have to not play? Like, who do I have to like basically fade? And that's what's going to be hard. The pricing is pretty tight on this slate. There's not a ton of value. There's not a Duvernay at $200 for me to just plug him in when I'm struggling with finding a salary saver. So I don't know that I'm going to get a lot of these other Cole Kmets or Harris. I don't think I'm going to get any of those. I might just focus on Jimmy Graham. And, Jimmy Graham at captain is not a bad option either. At 7,200, it's middle range. I think Jimmy Graham at captain will be 3% owned in the captain, so it could be a good option to get you different. But also be prepared. It's a large field tournament play. Be prepared to just lose that money and never see it again. Let's move on to Minnesota. Like I said, Kyle Rudolph. I mean, look, Kyle Rudolph's 3,400. So this is where it gets.
I didn't know that. I like him.
This is where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, look, with Irv Smith out, sort of changes everything because Irv Smith. We did a Minnesota Showdown slate earlier in the season, and I was high on Irv Smith, and he kind of crushed it. So like, Rudolph's been getting routes run, he's been getting snaps, and especially with Irv out, you got Tyler Conklin, who's the other option. I think Rudolph's going to be on the field quite a bit, and he's going to get a lot of targets because they just don't have anybody else. And at that price, 3,400, what do you think about him?
Yeah, I didn't know he was 3,400. I'll end up having a decent amount of him. I mean, it's looking like I'm just going to be building 4-2 stacks with the Vikings, which I didn't think I'd end up doing. But I mean, I'll have a decent exposure there at $3,400. I mean, it sounds like you can pretty much get the entire Minnesota offense without Kirk Cousins and be okay. You can probably jam in Rudolph, Madison, obviously Dalvin Cook, and then Justin Jefferson, and pretty probably still grab Allen Robinson and Nick Foles. So I think it opens up some interesting builds. I'm curious to see what his ownership is at. I think he's kind of going to fall under the radar here, but
Yeah.
I mean, he's less expensive than the kickers.
I would rather have him than the kickers, because he has a 2 touchdown upside. Now this season he hasn't been successful, but we all know Kyle Rudolph can get those red zone targets. He has a rapport with Kirk Cousins. The reason why he's not getting those targets this season, I don't know why. I'm not sure, but I know he can. If the ball's thrown to him, he can catch the ball and he can make tough catches. That playoff game last year, against the Saints, he caught that touchdown pass to win the game in the end zone. He's a big time player. I know that he's not really, from a fantasy aspect, not anything to write home about. But at 3,400, he's been hovering between 2,000 and 5,200 this year. He started out at 5,200 and he dropped drastically to 2,400, and that's when he had a touchdown reception. And then he creeped up, and then he fell back down. That's when he had a 7-point game at 2,000. So I'm not trying to predict if he's going to have a good game or not. I'm just going to spread him out higher than the field because I think he does have the opportunity to randomly catch a touchdown or two in a game. All right, let's move on to kickers and defense. This is our favorite part of the show. Thank you guys for sticking with us. We're going to be building the lineup here in 1 second. Stick with us to the end. Kickers and defense, you got Dan Bailey, and you've got Cairo Santos. I think Dan Bailey has a pretty good leg. I don't know if he's consistent enough, but he's the kind of guy who can kick a couple 50-yarders in a game. What's the weather? It's going to be cold as shit in Chicago, right? I mean, you're what, two hours from Chicago? What's the weather like where you're at right now at kickoff?
It's shitty. Like, this whole area is shitty. I don't know why the weather is projected to be okay for tomorrow. I don't think it will be.
It's not. There's no precipitation. There's no lightning. So I've labeled it as good, but that doesn't mean it's going to be warm. I'm sure it's going to be what, in the 30s or 40s, maybe.
Probably 40s. I mean, it's going to be cold and windy. That's pretty much what I can expect.
Yeah.
But look, all that means is don't play the Bears kicker, and I just think you don't do that anyway.
Yeah.
We saw kickers.
We saw, yeah, exactly.
The Vikings kickers are just as risky. I mean, shit.
Exactly.
I don't know, man. But you're probably going to have to play them. But 3,400, Kyle Rudolph is better than these kickers.
Better.
We don't even have the tool I'm using doesn't even have the kickers loaded in yet. What are their prices?
3,800 for Cairo Santos and $4K for Dan Bailey, and they're not projected very well. Usually these kickers are projected around 9 points, but because it's an outdoor game in Chicago, in November, I think they're actually like lower median projection than usual. And I don't blame them because I don't want to get as many kickers for this game. I don't know why. I know it's a low total, and typically you would be like, oh, load up on the kickers. I don't love the kickers for either of these teams. They've never traditionally been good. They're sort of there's been disasters on both ends in the playoffs, and it doesn't mean in this particular game these kickers are going to be terrible. But I just would rather go with Kyle Rudolph, or I'd rather go with another low owned guy that's at 5K. Like, I'd rather spend up for Cordero Patterson every day of the week than get Dan Bailey. Defenses. Vikings are 3K and Bears are 3,200. Look, Vikings, not a good defense, obviously. But the Bears have the potential at 3,200. The Bears can cause some damage. How are you handling the defenses here?
Yeah, I don't mind a little bit of the Bears. They're going to get some sacks. There's a good chance they can have 2-3 interceptions, and I don't know if they're going to fumble recovery. But those are all points. And on a slate like this, where all the key guys are pretty expensive, it's not it's not bad to kind of have a safe floor that you're going to get from the Bears defense. If they get 3 sacks and 2 interceptions and give up 30 points, you still got 5 points there. So again, it's not crazy, but I think they're in play. I don't. I think the Vikings defense might actually be in play as well too,
Yeah.
especially if Allen Robinson is out.
Yeah.
Then this is essentially the 49ers with a worse quarterback than Nick Mullins.
Yeah.
I I don't know, man. I think both defenses are in play. I'm not going to get crazy with it, but you can take a couple dart throws on one or two of these defenses.
I mean, interesting thing about defense is you have to have a lot of sacks, and like for your defense to pay off, you got to have either a shitload of sacks, multiple interceptions, fumble recoveries, or you've got to have a touchdown from the defense of the special teams. Like you just have to. I mean, we saw today with the Browns. The Browns gave up 7 points to Houston, and it was like at the end of the game, they scored some garbage time 7 points. Well, it wasn't garbage time, but they scored 7 points, and they only got 2 sacks. The Browns ended up with 6 fantasy points. I don't know why the scoring is the way it is, but if a defense gives up 7 points in 2020, they probably should be getting 12 fantasy points or something comparable to what a second string wide receiver would be getting. If you don't fix it, just get rid of defenses altogether on the main slate. Like that's my opinion on it. And I won't rant on it too much, but like, why like you're banking on a kickoff or a punt return, which has basically been eliminated from the sport. They don't want any kickoffs or punt returns. You're banking on that, or you're banking on a pick six, and pick sixes just don't happen as much as we need them to. So when it comes to these defenses, you're really banking on a pick six or a fumble recovery for a touchdown, and that's just a lottery pick. Like I don't know if it's going to happen. I have no clue. You know what I mean? What are your thoughts on all that? Like, just generally speaking, defensive scoring. I just don't love relying on a defense. Even if they give up 1 touchdown, they're probably not going to be in the optimal. They need to score a touchdown.
Yeah, they need to score a touchdown unless it's a low scoring game. So if this game hits the under, that's really kind of my thing here. I think that they're both in play, but if you think it's going to go over 44 and a half, or whatever the hell it's at, then I don't know if they are in play. But then again, I mean, look, what is it? Chase Winovich just recovered a fumble. Like the Pats defense wasn't anything to write home about here either, but they're going to get takeaways and sacks and might end up doing something decent. So I don't know, man. I think it comes down to roster construction and kind of wherever you land there. But if you have the salary to kind of choose between a defense and Kyle Rudolph, I think I'm going to lean more towards Kyle Rudolph in most of those one-to-ones.
Exactly, and that's my point is, okay, it's a low total. Well, who cares? It could be 7-10 like it was in the Browns game today. And if the Browns only got two sacks. So just even though they only gave up 7 points, it's a low-scoring game. It doesn't mean that you should play just load up on defenses and kickers. It probably isn't going to work out well for you. If you think that it's a dynamic defense with a quarterback that can turn the ball over, which in this case it is, then do it. But don't just look at the total and just assume you should load up defenses, because the way it's scoring on DraftKings, it's not going to benefit you. All right, let's move on to our fades. So fade of the night for me is going to be Nick Foles. I think it's just a roster construction thing. I don't think he has a very high ceiling. I think that I'd rather get Allen Robinson. I'd rather load up on other skill players like Adam Thielen, because I want to have Cook, Thielen, and Allen Robinson in a lot of the same lineups. I mean, it's probably not going to work out that way, but I want to have a lot of exposure to them. Nick Foles just doesn't allow me to get that. I think the ceilings on these on all of the players I just mentioned are way higher than Nick Foles' ceiling. And I don't know that you need him to get in the optimal. It's slightly taking a risk, but I'm going to bet on the fact that Nick Foles isn't going to come out and throw 4 touchdown passes tomorrow night in the cold. Talk to me about your fade of the night there, Ellie.
Yeah. Excuse me. Uh, I I don't like Kirk Cousins. I think he's a bad quarterback. I think he's going to throw 2 or 3 interceptions tomorrow night. And if you look at his overall pass attempts per game, they're not that great. He has a couple games where he's looking at 36, 38. Other than that, he's in the 20s. And he has a game in the last 2 weeks. He has 20 attempts, 14 attempts. That's attempts. That's not including completions. Last week he had 13 completions. The week before, 11. That's not going to get it done. I mean, if you're not getting completions at least 16, 17, you're probably not getting the yardage you need. And if you are, that's because Justin Jefferson or Dalvin Cook are going off. So, again, I think you can kind of fade the pay up there, go with Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook, and even probably Adam Thielen if fade both quarterbacks, you know. I think there's just better roster construction. I don't like Kirk Cousins and don't think he's great. Now, with that said, that means he's going to have a 350 night and 3 touchdowns, no picks. So keep that in mind. It's game script, and whatever you think is going to happen, just build that way.
I think both of these quarterbacks can shit the bed on any given night. I think they can both do it on the same night, to be honest. The question is with Showdown, even if they have an average game, you have to just weigh in the fact that even with a 16-point fantasy output for either of these guys, they could still end up in the optimal, and you might need those raw points just to actually cash. So I don't think I'm going to fade both of these guys, but maybe I'll make a rule that I don't want both of them in the same lineup, depending on my roster construction based on that lineup. If I think it's going to be a shootout, then I want to have both quarterbacks, and I want to fade one, maybe fade Thielen or something. But generally speaking, on a low total like this, I'm probably going to fade one of these guys and try to stick with more running backs if I can. All right, let's move on to our captain of the night. Ellie, tell me about your pick.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not going to lie. It's kind of a placeholder pick, kind of depending on what happens with the Allen Robinson injury. If Allen Robinson is in, then I don't think I'm going to have quite as much Darnell Mooney at captain. If A-Rob's out, then yeah, for sure. I think he's a valid play there. And he's got the big play potential, and I think people are going to sleep on his ownership a little bit. If Nick Foles keeps this team in the game, I think it's going to take a little bit of Darnell Mooney getting involved. But again, this is also largely a play based on the salary. He's not crazy priced, so you're going to have a high upside guy in the captain spot while still being able to jam in Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson. So this is mainly a move so that I can get as much Dalvin Cook as possible without having to play too much of him at the captain, so that I don't have to get super weird in a really cheap player. So that's really how I'm approaching this slate until some news breaks a different way.
Yeah, I like your pick a lot, actually, for sure. I think he has the high upside to break the slate. For me personally, Cordero Patterson, obviously, I'm sort of a homer when it comes to him. I like him. I think he has high upside. It's more of a wishful thinking in a lot of cases, but in this case, there's not a starting running back for this team. They're going to have to get creative. They're 5-4. They're trending down. Cordero Patterson is a dynamic player. I think that he's going to be on the field quite a bit. He's going to be put in situations where it's end arounds, screen passes, jump balls in the end zone. I think he's going to get way more involved than he has in the past. So to me, at that price tag, it allows you to get Dalvin Cook, Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, players like that in all in the same lineup at 5,200. And I think because he's middle of the road at captain price wise, I think he's gonna fall under the radar. So it might be a good opportunity to get a good roster construction with him at a guy that's under 5% in the captain. All right, man, let's build a lineup, dude. You want to do it?
Let's do it.
All right, who do we want to start with?
Honestly, I think we should start with Dalvin Cook because that's pretty much going to be the chalkiest lineup, and I think we want to make sure the audience knows kind of like what the chalky build is going to be just based off this.
Yeah, exactly. So let's plug in Dalvin Cook. Where do you want to go from here? Do we want to do a 4-2? Are we assuming that Minnesota is going to win this game, even though they're 3-5? Like, do you want to do like we can't do 3-3 with Dalvin Cook, so we have to make a decision. Do we want to do a 2-4 with him, or do we want to do a 4-2 with the Vikings?
I think you do I think it's a 4-2 with the Vikings, and you try and get the 2 right on the other side of the ball.
All right, so let's start with let's run it back on the Chicago side. Who do we want on Chicago? Do we want to just plug in Mooney, or do we want to plug in Allen Robinson?
I mean, I would prefer A-Rob over Foles, so I think we
Let's
should
do
go
that.
with
So,
Allen Robinson.
so you see where we're at here. We've got 2 players, and we have an average remaining of 4,700. So we're gonna have to get probably 2 very, very low quality players in here, low probability upsides, which could be fine. You could do Dalvin Cook and do 20 lineups with Dalvin Cook and the captain, spread it out, and just try to find the variance there. But for now, it's going to be a little bit of a difficult build. So where do we go from here? Let's jump back to Minnesota. Do we want to do Rudolph at 3,200?
Yes, we do.
I think we have to. So Rudolph. So I think it's safe to say we're going to fade the quarterbacks here. We have to. Unless we have a $200 guy we want to throw in there, we got to fade the quarterbacks in this lineup. So with Dalvin Cook, I don't think you're going to see any. If you do, there's going to be a lot of bullshit lineups going around. So Dalvin Cook, Robinson, Rudolph. We got 2 more Minnesota players we need to go with. How about we go with our boy Madison?
I like it. That's actually what my next suggestion was going to be. Since you called him, I'm going to go ahead and pick out my my next Vikings player, and then let me know what you see when you go with that final spot. Throw in Justin Jefferson.
I love it, dude. I love Jefferson. So this is actually a really good build. I think it has the possibility of like a medium amount of dupes. Like if you're doing the Millie Maker, which I don't even know if there's a Millie Maker for this tomorrow, but whatever the biggest tournament is tomorrow, I think you're probably right in the 30 to 40 dupe territory here, depending on our last pick. So we're at 4,800. We need 1 more Chicago player. Let's see. Where are we here? Let's look for Chicago players in the flex at 4,200. You got to go. You could either go Bears defense. You can go Cairo Santos. I think those are probably your best options. Now, unfortunately, Cordero Patterson. No, go ahead.
Anthony Miller. You should have Anthony Miller.
Oh yeah, Anthony Miller. Look at that. With zero left. I think by fading both quarterbacks here, this is a pretty good lineup. This is not bad.
I think it. Yeah, I think everyone, instead of Allen Robinson, they're going to be jamming in Nick Foles there. And what does that do? If you put in Nick Foles, that means you're going to free up a little bit of salary so you can come off of Anthony Miller. First of all, Madison's not going to get much love. So I don't think that this is going to be a unique lineup simply because of that.
So it would give you it would give you an extra 1,000, and you could get up to Cordero Patterson. You could get up to... Yeah, you can get Patterson, or most likely you'd probably end up getting. Yeah. Actually, that's pretty much it. You'd probably be plugging in Cordero Patterson there. But I like the other lineup much better than what we had. So, okay, so that's just a good idea on getting a 4-2 stack with the chalky captain and mixing it up from there. Let's do one more lineup build. Who do you want to build the lineup with now? Do you want to throw in Mooney or do you want to throw in Patterson?
Let's do Patterson.
All right, so let's look at Patterson here. Let's see, where is he at? All right, Cordero Patterson at 7.8K in the captain. That gives you 8.4K across the board here. So I think we should fit in 1 quarterback here. Do you want to do a 2-4 stack or do you want to do 4-2? I think maybe we should do a 4-2 here for the Chicago side of the ball, just to cover our bases here. I think we have to. I don't know. Where do you want to go here? I don't want to play Foles. I don't want to play Foles, but like if we might have to in this case.
So actually, I'm fine with that. So we can do this, right? Cordell Patterson. We obviously are playing Dalvin Cook, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. So we're gonna plug in Dalvin. Let's see.
Um, I see throwing Kirk Cousins and A Rob. Then that's the core for this, right? If you're playing Cordell Patterson and captain, you're making sure you have these guys in there. Now,
Yeah,
you may pivot off of A Rob to, if in this case we're building 4-2 Chicago's way, right? So we're
yeah,
not going to pivot off of A Rob to go to Adam Thielen, which you can do if you're going building another way. But from here, see what we got 7,600 left.
yeah.
Yeah,
We got 3,800 a pop. So you could do Anthony Miller. Actually, let's see if we can plug in Mooney, and let's see if there's anybody in that $1,000 range we would put in. You got Cole Kmet, Dwayne Harris. I don't know that I want to go down that far. I don't know. What do you think? Are you confident with any of those guys?
I don't mind Cole Kmet. I think it's a little risky, but I mean, in
I
a
think
situation like this,
I mean it's a little too risky with Patterson at 5% in the captain. I don't think you need it. But like
yeah.
If you think Mooney can go off, then do it. But I would rather go with. I mean, can we get? You know, let's see. I think Anthony Miller or Cairo Santos. I mean, you could do. Look at this. So you could do this. You could do Santos and the Bears defense here. You could, if you feel like it could be a slightly lower scoring game. You're capturing a lot of the points that potential points in this game. Personally, I'd probably go with Miller. It's tough. It's tough, dude, because I think this ends up being a 3-3, which you could do. You could do a 3-3, and you could go with Madison here. You got Cook, Madison, and Cousins. So this ends up being a 3-3, which is okay because you have a lower owned captain. I don't know that I love this particular lineup. I think it has potential, but I think you got to really play with this. You got to play with this a lot more. Actually, can we move up from Miller here? Let's see. At 5,600. No, I think that's it. I think we have to go with Miller. Any other suggestions on how to use Patterson better here?
I think the problem is we're gonna have to come off of. Look, I think get rid. You're gonna have to bite the bullet. Get rid of Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
Leave Alexander Madison in there, and then do what you need to. Right. I
Yeah, I
mean,
agree. I agree. It's going to be hard to build with these quarterbacks, man. All right, so
yeah.
right now we've got a 2-2 stack going. So I would prefer to go. I mean, we can go 3-3 if we need to. So let's look at what we've got here. We've got 7,900 left. That leaves us a lot of options. I think Justin Jefferson. Oh, dude, look at this.
Oh
Jefferson and
yeah.
Graham.
See, that's perfect, man. Like I get it. I get it. But Nick Foles, if he's completing passes, it's going to be 25 different people. So you want to hope I mean, getting 74 players on their offense in your lineup is not going to hurt you at all. So, I mean, look, dude, I love that. That's a great build, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty sexy. I mean, you're banking on the fact that both quarterbacks are going to spread the ball out, and if Kirk Cousins is slinging it and he spreads it out to 7 different receivers and he throws 2 touchdown passes, you might be able to get away with not having him in the optimal. It just depends. But that just gives you guys a little bit of a preview of the potential builds. So Ellie, we're at about an hour and 13 minutes. We're a lot better than an hour 40. So thanks guys for sticking with us. Send us out. What are your thoughts on roster construction here? How are you handling that? And what are your thoughts on the total score here? How's this game going to end up?
I think this game is probably going to be close to 24-13. I think it's going to be a garbage game. I'm not excited for it all. I'm just glad that we have football to watch, so I'll be thankful.
I'm going to interrupt you. So, the Patriots are going to win this game. Lamar Jackson is fucking pouring rain. Lamar Jackson just threw a little dump off pass with 2 seconds left, and dude dropped it. Dude dropped it to lose the game.
I do want to say something. People are hating on Lamar so much for his offensive struggles, and yeah, I get that he has some maturity that he needs. But you can't tell me that if he didn't have a receiver like DeAndre Hopkins, people wouldn't treat that offense entirely different. They make dumb play calls. They run the ball, or they pass the ball when they should be running, and they make Lamar have to be better. That's not how this team wins. They win by playing solid defense and running the ball. Let Lamar Jackson play his game. That's what makes him Lamar Jackson. Stop making him try and throw the ball 45 times per game. I mean, shit. There's like 3 quarterbacks who are going to win doing that anyway. So that's my night. That's what I'm going to send everybody out with.
All right. I'm going to say Vikings 35, Bears 14. I don't think the Bears really have a chance here. I think the Vikings can blow this team out. But who knows? This is the NFL. We just saw the Baltimore Ravens lose to the fucking New England Patriots with Cam Newton at quarterback. So anything can happen. Anyways, thanks a lot, guys, for sticking with us. We appreciate it. We're going to see you back. We're going to do a main slate show on either Tuesday or Wednesday. Not live this time. We had some problems. Sorry about that, guys. If you guys tuned in, we appreciate the support. We're going to go pre-recorded from now on, at least in the immediate future. So like this video, comment, send us some love. We really appreciate it, and we're going to talk to you later. All right, take it easy.
You and I.